The fleet moves like a hurt harp through cold water, each gun a distant promise of thunder. I remember home in the salt on my palms, and how small prayers fit into the seams of my coat. Steel breathes around us. We steer a fragile will across a sea that does not forgive mistakes. The gong speaks in the language of survival. Every heartbeat answers in the rhythm of duty. Men climb the sky to stitch silence into the enemy's map, carrying the weight of an entire fleet in their wake. We fly not for glory, but to break the noise of distant guns and make space for tomorrow. Numbers become ghosts on glass, every ping a possibility of death, every echo a calling we cannot refuse. The sea breaks open in metal flowers, and for a moment the world forgets the meaning of mercy. Fingers point to tiny islands. Each coordinate is a life folded into a strict, merciless plan. Once you seal your face to the wind, there is no room for fear, only the cold clarity of mission. Their guns answer our approach with iron, and we answer back with the thin poetry of falling ordnance. We mend what war tears, hope and pain braided together under the same worn thread. The plane becomes a needle in the sky, our fate hangs on whether we thread first. When metal is wounded, men become surgeons. The ship survives or dies by the courage of hands. Every hammer blow is a promise to the living below, a vow that we will not sink quietly into the sea. Words meant for home become prayers in the dark, carried in pockets until the ocean claims them. Each salvo is a voice raised against forgetting, a litany that records the price of holding ground. We write names into metal because memory must ride with ordnance when the sky becomes a ledger of loss. They wait with the patience of condemned men, each tick of their chronometer a small death unfolding. The sea answers with columns of dust, as if the earth itself groans under the weight of our conflict. Leadership is not the absence of doubt, but the willingness to bear it alone for others' sake. Up there, the cold is closer and the fear is honest. A man shoots back at the sky to keep his ship whole. Time compresses into a single syllable of terror. A life chooses to become our wound. The deck remembers the exact shape of explosions. Scars that do not fade teach sailors new prayers. We pull pieces of our days back from the sea and hope the next sunrise forgives our mistakes. Signals are the flesh of coordination. One wrong wave can turn order into ruin in an instant. At night, we trade bravado for silent confession, and the sky becomes a ledger of our small, shared fears. He reads his child's name aloud to keep the sound of home alive inside the thunder. We stitch steel with fire and the stubborn belief that ships, like people, can be mended if hands will it. Smoke buys seconds and seconds become survival. We trade sight for salvation without ceremony. We study their movements like surgeons studying pulses, seeking the single rhythm that will break their hold. In the pull of a dive, there is a prayer hidden between G-forces and the stubborn call to return. The hangar smells of oil and deferred grief, every face a ledger of near misses and promised returns. We speak in arcs of iron and smoke, hoping to translate pain into silence across a few ruined hills. He knows these shores by the map of scars they will bear, and his hands tremble with a respect both humble and fierce. He counts the seconds between bursts like beads on a rosary, each one a small miracle of survival. A wounded ship keeps going because men refuse to let it stop, and refusal becomes a kind of prayer. When a body is carried away, the deck inhales sorrow and stores it in silence for future nights. Bells mark the passage of time and the tally of loss, each ring a hollow chorus for the absent. We move past the ruin like witnesses, and the smoke writes the story of what we could not keep. A parachute is a soft covenant between life and sky. It folds the promise of return into tidy straps. Planes dance their bitter waltz, and each maneuver is a negotiation with fate and faith. In the smallest ritual soup, a shared cigarette, we refuse to let war steal our ordinary humanity. They pierce the dark not for glory, but to keep the fragile filament of life from snapping unseen. Language becomes light, and in those blinks we send reassurance across water and fear. They bring back pieces of the day smoke, a wing bent like regret, and the deck swallows them with quiet hands. Soft words in the middle of havoc can sound like miracles because they insist someone still cares. Waiting is its own kind of courage. Engines idle like held breath until orders break the silence. Every plotted line is a vow to those who trust us, written in ink that will not erase their hopes. In that bright treachery, we see faces as if carved in stone, each one a story that refuses to be forgotten. A photograph becomes a lighthouse, small, stubborn, refusing to be swept away by the tide of war. We steer through mornings that smell of gunpowder and salt, and the world ahead both beckons and threatens. Small blips are tombstones waiting to be named. Our job is to turn them into motion before they become danger. They fall like vows into the world's wound, hoping their impact will stitch some measure of safety for others. Laughter is brittle armor, it cracks, but when it holds, we feel human enough to keep fighting. Daybreak does not absolve us, but it offers the small mercy of another chance to act rightly. The earth takes our missiles into itself and keeps them as marks that will long outlast our bodies. We carry our losses back on cables and cranes and name each one in our bones. Sleep is a thin island here. In its brief shelter, we try to convince our hearts there will be another morning. Helmets hold the echoes of shouts, the warmth of breath, the memory of hands that steadied us in terror. The ledger is the cold witness to sacrifice. We honor names by counting them honestly and mourning them loudly. A toy is a stubborn heirloom of innocence. We keep it near because it reminds us what we fight for. Nature collects our violence quietly, and the sea will eventually claim even the loudest of our deeds. A thumbprint on paper is a private benediction. Small rituals steady men before they launch into the chaos. We race to collect the pieces because abandoning them would be a quiet, intolerable betrayal. Promises are the fragile medicine of this place. They must be uttered with the courage of those who can keep them. Storms do not ask permission for their fury. They remind us how small our plans are against raw nature. We endure the weather as we endure war by clinging to one another and to the stubborn desire to survive. Reports reduce human mornings into sentences. Still we read them as if they might shelter a miracle. We cut through mist because to wait is to risk being devoured by the enemy's patience. Bearings are the trust we give the world. We follow them trusting someone else's hand will hold steady. Even battered machines carry the stubborn dignity of return. A landing is a small triumph over the day's havoc. Steadiness is learned by touch more than by orders. It passes from hand to hand like a sacred tool. At night the stars feel like permission to imagine home, and we hold those small lights close between gunfire and sleep. What we break becomes a landscape of grief. Those who survive are tasked to carry the ruined stories. In the smallest private moments, leaders write confessions to themselves and keep them where no one can judge. Hands that reload are hands that refuse despair. Each round becomes an argument against surrender. When metal meets the sea, it disappears into quiet. We mourn by remembering its last bright arc. We bury quickly but with ceremony, because even in haste the dead deserve the dignity of being named. Taps carry the language of endings, and in its notes we hear the chorus of thousands barred but unbroken. We press the sky to make room for bombs and hope that the noise will buy men on the ground a future. In that mirrored sky we see our own faces framed by falling metal and the unspoken wish to return. In the hush of midnight we do the slow work of keeping life afloat, patching hope into steel. For a moment the deck breathes easy. The word open tastes like victory and temporary salvation. Even wounded, the ship keeps its course. Stubbornness becomes the most human response to overwhelming odds. Records keep truth from dissolving. Each entry is a quiet oath to remember who we have been. Plans are remade in wet light and urgency. Leaders trade maps and courage until a path appears. Tears in the wind are unsung. They fall for lost comrades and for the fragile mercy of survival. They step from dark into light, carrying the smell of smoke and the stubborn refusal to be erased. Small acts of preserving beauty become our secret resistances against war's hunger to obliterate everything gentle. They watch us go and learn early the map of absence. One day they will tell stories about our passage. We toast the living with a quiet ferocity, because to celebrate is also to proclaim we still intend to return. We withdraw like wounded birds, carrying both victory and the heavy gravity of names that will not come home. He charts not only geography, but the contours of loss. Each island holds a ledger of what we traded. The sea keeps our stories between its tides, and in its patient turning gives us both anonymity and memory. We gather the shards of our day to make something whole again, a meal, a joke, a vow to press on. He presses paper to his chest and chooses to believe that ink can tether him back to what he loves. Arrival is not the end but a tiny truce. We step ashore carrying the weight of those who could not. Music makes the wound whole for a breath. For that breath we remember why we stood through all the noise. We leave the sea behind for now, carrying its salt in our bones and the fragile hope that tomorrow will be kinder.